I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't even ask her why. Instead, I woke up at 6:13 a.m., made my usual coffee, black, 1 sugar, and sent a calendar invite to the one department she never thought she'd need to fear: Human Resources. Subject line: Policy Breach Confidential. Attached a single PDF titled Conflict of Interest. No sender name, no reply requested. It was a Monday. By Wednesday, she was holding a cardboard box filled with framed smiles and farewell plants. Stepping out of the building she once ruled like her personal stage. She didn't see me on the bench across the street, but I saw her. Her eyes were red. Not crying red, angry red. The kind that comes when you know the person who destroyed you never raised their voice. I waited until she reached the crosswalk. Then I stood up and waved. Small, casual, just enough. She froze. Just for a second. Long enough. And then I turned, walked away, and never looked back. She always thought silence was awkward. She'd fill it with laughter, filler, flattery. At parties, at meetings, even in our quiet moments. She couldn't let the silence stretch too long. But me? I studied it. Mastered it. Let it hang heavy in the air like truth no one wants to touch. When I found the message from Derek, a late-night ping lit up on her tablet like a flare. I didn't flinch. I watched. I learned. I made a folder called Receipts and filled it slowly. This wasn't rage. This wasn't heartbreak. This was strategy. She broke the rules. I just knew how to file the paperwork. So when people ask me what happened, how Elisa Grant, the shining star of the sales team, got walked out with a box and a pitiful little severance, I don't explain. I sip my coffee, I nod, and I say the only thing worth saying. She should have read the handbook. It started with a notification. Her tablet was unlocked, face down, humming softly against the kitchen counter while she showered. The screen lit up once, then again. I hadn't meant to see it. But I did. The name? Derek Vaughn. The first message was vague, still thinking about that smile. The second made it clear. Same time tomorrow? That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew. I didn't scroll further, I didn't need to. Alyssa was careful, smart, always kept things off-grid, off paper, off anything that left a trail. But this was her first mistake. And it was all I needed to begin. I went upstairs, smiled as she walked out of the steam, kissed her on the forehead, and asked how her Monday was shaping up. She laughed, oblivious, told me she had a long day of back-to-back meetings. Interesting, because her calendar said otherwise. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened her tablet again, no password change. Too confident, too sure of herself. A swipe, a tap, and I was inside her inbox. The messages weren't explicit, but they didn't have to be. They were coded in the way all office affairs are. Words chosen just safely enough to dodge suspicion, wrapped in the fake professionalism of calendar invites and project update. Follow up on the Baker deck. Need your input on that strategy, Doc. Let's sync up again off-site. Her company was strict on internal relationships, very strict. Full disclosure to HR, mandatory training, reassignment protocols. They had zero tolerance for conflicts of interest. She knew that. She'd told me about it once, laughing about how ridiculous it was that grown adults had to ask permission to fall in love. But this wasn't love, this was arrogance, and now it was archived in her inbox. I took screenshots, clean, well-framed, time-stamped. Then I checked shared drives, synced files, even her Slack messages. The flirting was subtle but unmistakable. Winks buried in emojis, late-night file revisions that coincided perfectly with hotel check-ins from her expense report. Yes, I pulled her statements too. You'd be amazed what people forget to hide when they think their partner isn't paying attention. Over the next week, I built a timeline. Every business dinner she'd had with Derek matched the same pattern. Same days, same excuses, same lie. She'd say she was working late, and 2 hours later, her GPS history would ping at a restaurant downtown, or worse, a boutique hotel 6 blocks from her office. She thought I didn't notice. She thought I didn't care. That's the thing about quiet men. We're always listening. I compiled everything into a neat, structured folder. Subfolders by category, messages, expenses, photos, HR policy excerpts, even a few screenshots of the company handbook highlighting key phrases. Disclose all romantic relationships. Failure to report will result in disciplinary action, up to and including termination. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Every lie, every misstep, organized, documented, airtight. There was one photo that sealed it. A selfie she'd sent him from the office, tongue between her teeth, tie loose around her neck, his tie. The caption read, "Oops, I borrowed something." Her company's logo was visible in the background. She wasn't just reckless, she was careless. And carelessness is how people get caught. I backed everything up twice. One copy went into the cloud, encrypted. The other onto a flash drive I kept in my glove box. Not because I was paranoid, because I was prepared. Elisa was still smiling at home, still cooking dinner, making plans, texting "can't wait to see you" to someone who wasn't me. But I didn't stop her. I let her dig the hole a little deeper, because by then I wasn't her boyfriend anymore. I was her consequence. By the time I finished collecting the evidence, the next step wasn't a question of if, only how. I didn't want revenge that made noise. I didn't need to shout or argue or corner her into admitting anything. I wanted something far cleaner. Something that couldn't be debated or twisted. Something that left no room for manipulation or apology. She worked for a Fortune 500 firm, big on public image, strict on ethics. Her department sent out mandatory training videos every quarter with cheerful HR representatives reminding employees that consensual doesn't mean exempt. And yet, she'd carried on a months-long affair in the same building, under the cameras, under their own policy radar. I didn't need to expose her to me. I needed to expose her to them. So I started laying it out. No drama, no flourish, just structure. I arranged every screenshot, every receipt, every timestamp into a chronological order. I labeled each interaction with the corresponding violation it supported: undisclosed relationship, use of company time for personal engagements, misuse of travel budget. Each piece was formatted like a legal document. Header, time, incident, policy breached. Not because I needed it to impress someone, but because I knew HR wouldn't waste time on rumors or emotion. They wanted facts. I gave them nothing else. I included calendar invites that had been disguised as work sessions. I matched them to security footage timestamps pulled from her building's public visitor check-ins. Derek had signed in after hours more than once, using a guest pass Elisa was responsible for issuing. Even if their relationship had been disclosed, which it wasn't, those alone would have been enough to trigger a full-scale review. I cross-referenced her Slack chats with the times she had supposedly been homesick. Turns out, she wasn't very good at staying offline when she was resting. One message from Derek said, "You left your heels at my place again," and was sent during a day she'd told her team she had the flu. I added that one in bold. The last item I included wasn't digital at all. It was a photo I took during one of my random drop-ins. Me bringing her lunch, standing in the lobby, while she and Derek stood too close near the elevator, laughing like school kids. They didn't see me. I didn't need them to. Once the package was complete, I printed it. A clean white envelope, no handwriting, no name, just one typed label across the front. Conflict of interest, internal review. I drove to her office that Thursday afternoon, brought a sandwich from her favorite deli, smiled, handed it to her receptionist with a casual wave. Then I walked to the HR floor, stepped inside like I belonged there, and placed the envelope on the intake desk. No note, no explanation. I didn't need to say a word. The documents spoke for themselves. And by the time she'd hear the fallout, I'd already be gone. It took 48 hours. 2 days after I dropped the envelope at HR, the machine kicked in. Quietly, efficiently, just the way I'd hoped. Elisa didn't mention anything at first. She came home that evening complaining about a sudden compliance audit that had popped up at the office. Said it was probably targeting the finance department. I just nodded. Stirred the pasta. Asked if she wanted red or white sauce. She chose red. She had no idea that the storm circling her had her name printed all over the radar. The next morning, she was out of the house by 7:30 a.m., unusually eager. She said she had a quick alignment meeting with her supervisor. Her voice was upbeat, but her eyes were distracted, flicking to her phone like she was already bracing for something. That's how people look when they sense a shift, but can't figure out where it's coming from. At 10:42 a.m., I got a text from her. "Babe, weirdest thing. HR just asked me to come in for a quick chat. Wish me luck, lol." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. By the time she sat down in that soundproof HR conference room, the envelope had already circulated. Legal had reviewed it. Compliance had cross-checked the policy violations. Internal Affairs had started taking statements. And Derek, he wasn't exempt. He'd been called in an hour before her. The timing wasn't accidental. Her company knew better than to give co-conspirators time to align their stories. That's why they scheduled interviews with staggered starts and overlapping questions. This wasn't a conversation, it was an internal investigation. By 3:15 p.m., her Slack status went dark. By 4:30 p.m., her badge had been deactivated. When she walked through our front door that evening, she didn't speak right away. She dropped her purse on the counter, kicked off her heels, and stared at me like she was waiting for a reaction. I gave her none. She muttered something about needing to sort things out, said she was going to take a few personal days, said it wasn't a big deal, but her voice was frayed. The confidence she always wore like perfume had evaporated. She spent the next day in silence, made a few calls, texted someone. I assumed it was Derek, but her phone didn't buzz with a reply. And then, just after noon on Friday, she got the call. Her voice cracked as she answered. She went into the bedroom to take it. 20 minutes later she came out, pale and trembling, a cardboard box in her arms, already half-packed. "I need to stop by the office," she said, her voice dry, "to pick up my things." I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, and when she left, I followed, at a distance. I parked across from her building 2 rows back, under the shade of a jacaranda tree. She emerged 26 minutes later holding that box, walking slowly, shoulders hunched like the weight wasn't from the objects inside but from everything she'd just lost. She didn't see me sitting there, but I saw her, and I didn't feel pity. I felt justice. 2 days after I watched Elisa leave her building with a cardboard box and a ghosted future, I sat at a cafe 6 blocks away from her old office. It was one of those quiet spots with hand-poured coffee and a soft jazz playlist that no one really listens to, but everyone appreciates. The kind of place where no one asks questions and nobody cares who you were yesterday. I brought my laptop, not because I needed to work, but because I had one final thing to do. The backup folder sat quietly on my desktop, labeled in neutral gray, Evidence. Inside it, an entire narrative. Screenshots, GPS logs, Slack threads, company policies, time-stamped receipts, and photographs. The folder had been a lifeline for weeks, a map of my pain turned into purpose. But now, it was dead weight. She'd already paid the price. Derek? He hadn't been fired. Not yet. But a source in her office told me he was under review, stripped of his leadership duties, and working from home indefinitely. His days were numbered. She wasn't returning his calls, and word around the building was that he'd been reassigned pending further investigation. They were both falling, just at different speeds. I clicked open the folder one last time. Not to admire it, not to relive it, just to be certain it was still real. I scrolled through the files, letting each one flash for a second, like silent frames in a reel of consequences. The images no longer triggered anything. No anger, no sadness, just completion. I right-clicked the folder, selected delete, then hit confirm. The screen flickered, and the folder vanished. No ceremony, no drama, just digital silence. I sipped my coffee, leaned back, and opened a new tab. Nothing worked, just a travel site. For the first time in months, I let my mind drift towards somewhere else. Maybe Lisbon, maybe Koto. Somewhere distant where no one wore badges and nobody used words like alignment meeting as a cover for betrayal. My phone buzzed. It wasn't her. It was someone new. I'd met her 2 weeks ago. Her name was Lauren. She worked in architecture, loved old cities, and hated small talk. We'd gone for drinks once, and I liked the way she didn't try to impress anyone. She asked smart questions. She listened. She never looked over my shoulder when I spoke. Her message was simple. "Still on for tonight?" I smiled, typed back. Wouldn't miss it, and that was that. I left the cafe without finishing the coffee. The day was bright, traffic steady, people walking with purpose. The world had kept turning, and so had I. There was no need for closure speeches or last words. Some betrayals don't get apologies. Some victories don't need celebrations. As I stepped into my car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Calm, centered, whole, and behind me, only ash.